And good morning, everybody. I'm honored and humbled to have the opportunity to work with the extraordinary group of speakers and members of the legal community. It's extraordinary. I'm humbled by the opportunity to do this today. And I will tell you all, this is the first of what I hope to be many future opportunities to engage with each other and engage in the rule of law and the importance of what we do as members of the legal community. Today, we're going to have 5 speakers. Erwin Chemerinsky, who is the dean of Berkeley Law School, had a class this morning. He's kind of like one of those ball players that's never missed a starting lineup. He's never missed a class. At least he says that. And so I've recorded his comments, and they run about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So we're going to start by having Dean Chemerinsky's remarks for us all. And then what I'm going to do is introduce each of the speakers as they come in, and it'll be a brief introduction. All these speakers are so very well known that all you need to do is look at their names, as you can see on the screen, and you can go online and find out more information than I could ever share with you. So with that said, let me pull up Erwin.
It is imperative that we stand up for justice. I never imagined that I would be so afraid for the future of American democracy as I am now. It's crucial to remember that the rule of law is nonpartisan. Democracy is nonpartisan. Why is it that I'm so afraid? Look at some of the things that have happened just over the last few months. All of this is inconsistent with the most basic principles of the Constitution and the rule of law. None of this should be partisan in any way. The reality is, if we're going to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law, it's going to have to be through the judicial branch. And yet I worry that there's a systematic effort to intimidate judges. There have been tragic instances of judges who had family members killed because of disagreement with their rulings. We have instances of judges who have been harassed, even at home, out of disagreement with their rulings. We've had no less than members of Congress call for impeachment of judges because of disagreement with their rulings. We've got to remember, as Chief Justice Roberts said, never in American history has a judge been impeached and removed because of disagreement with the rulings. And so this is a time when we need to support, we need to protect judges. It's the only way to uphold the rule of law. So what is it that we can do at this moment in time? It's crucial that we reiterate our values, that we reiterate our support for the rule of law, for democracy, for the Constitution. It's important that there be challenges to those things that are illegal and unconstitutional. It's essential that we support the judges who will be adjudicating the cases. And it's crucial that we speak up loudly at this time. I've constantly had in mind over the last few months the words of Pastor Martin Niemöller. After he was released from a concentration camp, he said, "They came for the socialists, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't a socialist. They came for the trade unionists. I didn't speak up because I wasn't a trade unionist. They came for the Jews, and I didn't speak up because I wasn't Jewish. Then they came for me, and there was no one to speak up for me." Let us not be the generation that someday will have to echo words like that. Let us now emphatically speak up for justice.
Well, those are inspiring words to begin with from Dean Chemerinsky, and to be followed only by federal Judge Paul Grimm, now retired. Judge Grimm spent 26 years on the district court. From 2012 to 2022, he served as an Article III district court judge. And Judge Grimm is now a professor at Duke University Law School. And when you hear him speak, you'll only wish that he was your professor at one point in your life. So, Judge Grimm, I'm going to pull you up, and it's all you. Go.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you for all of you who are tuning in and for my fellow panelists. So we should take this opportunity to try to shed some light and not some heat. And it's important to remember that our country was founded to protect fundamental rights and liberties because the founders of our country had lived through a system where there was a king who claimed that he was answerable only to God and that he was above the law. Our founders wanted a system of government where no person or organization or government official was above the law. They wanted law to rule, and that's what we call the rule of law. In our country, our Constitution is the supreme law of the land. It protects our rights and liberties from excessive governmental power. That is its function. To ensure the rule of law, the Constitution created a divided government, three separate branches, and each of which was given the ability to prevent the other from assuming too much control. This is called separation of powers between the president, the Congress, and the judiciary. And the ability of each branch to prevent abuse by the other branches is called checks and balances. Now, if we were forming a government today, we might think, well, this is sort of a very complicated system where you have three different branches of government, each of which wants to be heard. But it was done by design to make sure that no one branch assumed total power. Checks and balances is part of the DNA of our country. It's what defines us as a country, as a democracy. So how does the judiciary exercise checks and balances? Well, it does it by deciding actual cases and controversies. Judges don't just come in one day and say, well, I'm going to write an opinion that says that something is right or wrong. They have actual people who bring cases that raise claims, and they have to decide them. And those claims can include individuals or organizations that claim that one branch of government or the other has exceeded its constitutional powers, and in doing so, cause them injury, legally recognizable injury. This constitutional responsibilities that the courts have is called judicial review. And it's been a critical part of our country since 1803 and accepted and never questioned. Now, when a lawsuit is filed claiming that an action by Congress or of the president is exceeding the authority and it causes injury or harm to the parties that brought the lawsuit, the judges have a constitutional obligation to decide the case. They took an oath when they became judges to do so. In order for judges to exercise their fundamental role, they must be independent and they must be impartial. They have to fairly decide cases with neutrality. And this independence is guaranteed by Article 3 of the United States Constitution. As Dean Chemerinsky just said, and as noted by Chief Justice John Roberts, in the entire history of our nation, no judge has ever been impeached and removed from office for having decided a case assigned to them in a way where they ruled that either the president or Congress disagreed with. It has never happened. Whenever a judge decides a case, there are going to be winners and losers. It's not surprising that people who don't like the outcome of a case will disagree with what the ruling was. But our judicial system has built-in safeguards to protect against an erroneous ruling by a judge. Namely, the party that says that they disagree with the outcome can file an appeal to an appellate court and ultimately even the United States Supreme Court. And these higher courts can act, and they have acted in the last weeks to take action to correct or to dial back a decision of a trial court judge if they believe that it went too far. Now, for well over a decade, there has been a trend where government officials from both sides of the political spectrum, this is not associated with one party or another, it has come from both sides of the political spectrum, where when they disagree with the outcome of a court decision, they attacked personally the motives of the judge, undermining their professionalism, challenging their integrity, simply because they disagreed with the ruling. Increasingly, these attacks have included threats and attempts to intimidate judges by threatening impeachment based on nothing more than the fact that they disagree with the ruling that the judges made. And some of these attacks have led to verbal and even physical threats and attacks against judges and their family members. Some of them have died as a result of this. This is the result of these kinds of attacks. Chief Justice John Roberts, our Chief Justice, has said twice in the past few months that threats against judges, attempts to intimidate them, threats to impeach them for simply doing their jobs, as well as spreading misinformation about the judges and the judicial system, is indefensible. This conduct threatens judicial independence, diminishes public confidence and trust in the judiciary, and weakens the rule of law and our democracy. Lawyers take an oath to defend the Constitution when they become an attorney, and they have an ethical obligation to speak out in defense of judges who are unfairly criticized or attacked, and to defend the judicial system. When unfair attacks are made against the judicial system or individual judges, lawyers and bar associations need to react promptly, but respectfully and in a nonpartisan fashion to explain why that attack was unjustified or unwarranted. In addition, judges, and especially lawyers who are such skilled communicators, have a duty to proactively engage with our wonderful citizens of this country that we all love passionately, to help them understand this crazy complicated system that we have that has worked for us for 200 and more years and has made us the wonderful nation that we're so proud of today. The bottom of line is without an independent judiciary ruling without fear of anyone or favor owed to anyone or organization, the rule of law would not exist. Our fundamental rights, liberties, and property rights would be vulnerable, and our democracy would not survive. Thank you.
Judge Grimm, thank you so much for your remarks. That was outstanding. And it reminds me, just for everyone that's watching, everyone knows the expression. The expression is the first thing you do is you kill all the lawyers. That's a great line from Henry VI, Part 2 by Shakespeare. But what people don't realize is that line, the first thing you do is kill all the lawyers. The question before that is, what can I do to become the king of the land, to rule the domain that we live in? And the answer, you kill the lawyers. This is intended and will be a nonpartisan approach to the world that we live in. But it's impossible to have a discussion about these issues without recognizing that we must protect the justice system. And all of us feel deeply about the rule of law and protecting the justice system. Each comment is nonpartisan, but it is about protecting the rule of law. And with that said, one of our greatest protectors has been Eileen Moore. And Justice Moore, who I'm going to bring in here, Justice Moore is an amazing appellate justice. She's been on the court for 3 decades. She's been on the Court of Appeal for 25 years. In early life, she was lieutenant during the Vietnam War, where she served as a nurse. Veterans issues have been important to her entire career, and she's going to talk about veterans issues and access to justice. Justice Moore, it's you.
Thank you very much. And hello, everybody. Indeed, I am Justice Eileen Moore, and many decades ago, I was in the Army Nurse Corps when I was a combat nurse in Vietnam. My concern about access to justice is for our military veterans. I don't want to see our current veterans treated with the same disrespect our Vietnam veterans were. While most returning soldiers are able to successfully transition back into civilian life, many are not able to do so because of something that happened while they were serving our country. Sometimes these veterans find themselves sideways with the law. I saw that when the soldiers woke up to see a nurse standing next to them, they didn't know where they were. All they knew was that part of America was there for them, and they felt safe. Thoughts of America is what keeps our soldiers going. Often a hand would reach up just to make sure we were really there. Even when we had to tell them they lost an arm or a leg or an eye, the first words out of their mouths were something like, "Charlie can't get me now, I'm going home." We owe it to our veterans to stand by them if they get in trouble, but we can't really help them that much without the Department of Veterans Affairs, the VA. There are 48 veterans treatment courts here in California alone and over 600 nationwide, primarily in state courts. These courts help veterans find their way back to being the good citizens they were before joining the military by giving them treatment instead of incarcerating them. Veterans treatment courts are operated on a team basis. In order for them to be effective, the team includes someone who works for the VA. VA personnel has specific training and experience with treating post-traumatic stress disorder and other maladies suffered by many who served in the military. PTSD is nothing new. In the 7th or 8th century BC, Homer wrote about warriors feeling deep alienation on their return from war. Shakespeare's Lady Percy and Henry IV spoke words about a returning soldier's nightmares. As many as 15% of Vietnam vets had post-war PTSD, about 14% of Gulf War veterans, and up to 20% of those who served in Iraq and Afghanistan had PTSD as a result of their military service. We witnessed so many of our Vietnam veterans standing along highways, holding out tin cups because America turned its back on them during times when there were no veterans treatment courts. Since that time, we have learned we can hate a war, but still love and cherish our warriors. VA personnel are essential to successful veterans treatment courts throughout the nation. We need to keep VA personnel in our veterans treatment courts. Thank you.
You so much, Justice Moore. I really appreciate those remarks, and it's an important part of our acknowledgement, the service of the veterans in this country and making sure they have access to justice and their rights are protected. With that, I'm going to bring in Kenneth Feinberg. Ken Feinberg is a prominent attorney in America. He is a former administrator of the September 11th Victims' Compensation Fund. He is a leading mediator in this country. I've had him myself as a mediator in some of my cases. In his earlier life, he was the former chief of staff to Senator Edward Kennedy. Mr. Feinberg, all yours.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased and honored to join my fellow panelists. And Paul, congratulations on your technology skills. It's truly marvelous to watch you in action.
Bless you.
I want to give two examples of the importance of the rule of law in our nation. Too often we just assume that we live under a rule of law, but I want to give two specific examples of how important the rule of law is in our society, in our republic. I remind everybody that in the year 2000, by the narrowest of margins in American history, President Bush became president. But President Bush defeated Vice President Al Gore only as a result of a Supreme Court of the United States decision calling for the election, ratifying the election of President Bush. And that vote in the Supreme Court was by a single majority of 5-4. And what was the result of that vote? There were no riots in the street. There were no mobs surrounding the Supreme Court. There was no violence. There were no physical threats. And that's because the body politic, the American people, understood that the rule of law must prevail. Many disagreed with that decision by a single vote. Many disagreed. But they did not resort to armed conflict, as in some foreign countries. They recognized the rule of law must prevail under our Constitution. And I look at that decision in 2000 as the perfect example of how the American people, at the end of the day, when all else fails in the courtroom or in the street, the rule of law prevails. And people understand in our democracy that without that rule of law, there is no freedom, no liberty, and no democracy. The second example I cite is much more close to home to me. In 2001, as many of you know, 13 days after the terrorist attacks at the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, the airplanes, Congress passed a unique, unprecedented law that created a voluntary victim compensation program for the victims of the 9/11 attacks, funded entirely by the American taxpayer. The program was voluntary. Nobody had to participate. You could instead, if you were eligible, elect to go to court. That program, passed by Congress unanimously, was challenged in court as an unlawful decision by Congress to confer all the authority in valuing lives, in determining compensation, in determining eligibility for compensation. All of that authority was delegated to one person. And the administration, the Bush administration, asked me to do it. And I did it. Some people, not many, but some decided to go to court to challenge the discretion of the administrator, Mr. Feinberg, in attempting to value individual lives. In a courageous decision, Judge Alvin Hellerstein, federal judge, New York City, heard argument, and he said, under the rule of law, Congress may ask Mr. Feinberg to perform that function. His discretion will largely determine whether or not an individual is eligible and how much compensation, public money, will be awarded. Certain lawyers, not many, but some, unhappy with that verdict of Judge Hellerstein, appealed to the appellate court, the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which unanimously sustained the decision of Judge Hellerstein and permitted the program to go forward so that individuals could choose. Do they want to participate or do they want to go to court instead as to their individual claim? 33 months later, 97% of all eligible victims decided voluntarily to accept the decision of the courts and participate in the program funded by the taxpayer. In no other country, I would venture to argue, in no other country could a program like the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, so generous, distributing over $7 billion in taxpayer money to the victims of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, in no other country with the rule of law and the discretion of the courts and the administrator of the fund receive such common voluntary acceptability. The point is clear to me. Without the rule of law, without an understanding, not among the judges and the lawyers, but the American people, without their understanding about the sacrosanct nature, the noble nature, the nobility of the law, free from political and violent interference, we would not have the country we have today. So I'm honored and frankly privileged to be asked to participate in this program, to remind everyone, if you need reminding at all, about the importance of the rule of law and the importance of fair, equal justice for all those who inhabit our great land. And I thank you.
Mr. Feinberg, that is very much appreciated. And thank you so much. A couple of notes. Number one, there've been lots of questions coming in. To be clear, now's not the time to answer them, but if you send your questions to speakupforjustice@kiesel.law, it's available. I'll answer those questions. I won't give you legal advice, but I'll answer your questions to the extent I can. Feel free to send them on and we'll give you answers to those questions. Number two, this presentation is being recorded and it will be available online. If you've missed some of the notes or you can't get it all, you can always go back online to the speakupforjustice.law website and it will be there. I'm thrilled to have our program conclude with one of the most remarkable judicial officers I've had the pleasure of really getting to know well, and that is going to be Judge Esther Salas, Federal District Court Judge from New Jersey, my home state. So bless you for that. Judge Salas, take it away.
So good day to everyone. And I do want to thank everyone, the thousands of you who have come online to hear and to be part of this first Speak Up for Justice event. Thank you so much. I have to agree with Judge Grimm when he talks about, in this past decade, and he, of course, was citing our Chief Justice, to the attacks against the judiciary that have come from both the right and the left. I've described it recently as a bonfire that's been burning some time. But regrettably, we see that accelerants are being thrown on this bonfire, and it's burning real hot. Judges are dealing with unprecedented attacks. We've had members of Congress calling for judges to be impeached for doing their jobs. We have had our leaders and people in positions of power and people with large social platforms calling us names, calling us rogue judges, calling us crazy, leftist, unconstitutional judges, accusing us of being corrupt and partisan without any bases. And now we are facing what appears to be a targeted strike against judges in the form of intimidation by unknown sources. Hundreds of pizzas have been delivered to judges all over this country in the last few months. And in the last few weeks, judges' children are delivering pizzas to the homes of judges' children. And then, just this past week, we found out pizzas were being sent to judges and their children in the name of Daniel Anderl, my murdered son, who gave his life as an act of love for me and his father on July 19, 2020, who went to the door and stopped the lawyer that was posed as a delivery driver and took one shot to the chest and fell back with his arms in a cross position. Daniel gave his life as an act of love. My husband almost lost his life trying to protect our family. And now Daniel's name is being weaponized to bring fear to judges and their children. What do these pizza deliveries mean, ladies and gentlemen? You send a pizza to a judge to their home, in late nights, by the way. You're saying, I know where you live. You send pizzas to judges' children's homes. You say, I know where your children live. And now you're sending pizzas to judges and their children. in Daniel's name, what are you saying? You're saying to those judges, you want to end up like Judge Salas? You want to end up like Judge Salas's son. These are alarming developments. And we're here to shine light, as Judge Grimm says, not heat, on these developments. History matters, though. History matters. We have to honor our past and protect our future by speaking up today, by speaking up for justice today. Let me be clear. This is not a Republican issue. This is not a Democrat issue. This is an American issue. In the spirit of lifting up our judiciary, I want to spend whatever time I have left, though, talking to you all on how we make a difference. How can we push back on this violence, on this intimidation? How do we stop the spreading of disinformation, as the Chief Justice warned us about in his year-end report? So I want to speak directly to the lawyers and judges that are here today participating in this live event. And I want to encourage you to get involved in what I'm describing as a movement, the civics education movement that is being led by trailblazers, Chief Judge Londia McCafferty, Judges Beth Bloom and Robin Rosenberg. These women are doing innovative things when it comes to civic education. And if you don't have a program in your district and you're interested in hearing about some great ideas, I urge you to contact those judges. Paul mentioned it. Paul, you mentioned it earlier. We hope this isn't the first Speak Up for Justice event. We hope and we encourage you all. We welcome you all to have your own Speak Up for Justice events in your districts. Invite your constitutional scholars. Invite active sitting judges in your district to participate. These are great ways for us to work together. The Federal Judges Association is doing something as well. The FJA has launched its campaign for a strike. It's a campaign, but it's called Champions for Justice. And so to the lawyers and the retired judges that are joining us, we need you. We need you to be champions for justice, to speak when active members of the judiciary cannot. And we need you to come forward and be our voice when we are being unfairly attacked. As for the tension that has existed as long as the Republic, look, we all know there has been tension between the three branches of government. That's to be expected. But this country has prospered when these three branches of government work within its constitutional framework to serve as checks and balances. Toward that end, we encourage our leaders, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, to be champions for justice, to speak out when the judiciary is being unfairly attacked. We ask our leaders to defend the rule of law, to honor our Constitution, and to protect our democracy. We also want to thank in advance the Department of Justice for what I know will be a fulsome investigation into these unprecedented attacks against the judiciary. We ask the Department of Justice to find the people responsible for these heinous acts and bring them out of the shadows and into the light. And for those of you joining us who are not judges or lawyers, but concerned citizens, we also want to encourage you to be champions for justice. You have the power to support the judiciary by attending programs like this one, by supporting law schools, by supporting law firms and lawyers and organizations that are standing up now for the rule of law. Together, we can demand more of ourselves and of our leaders. Words matter. How we treat each other, that matters. How we react to rulings that may not always go our way, that matters. Let's be better. Let's do better by respecting the legal process. Each of you have the power to bring light and positivity wherever you go. You can lead by example in your communities. Ladies and gentlemen, we are not living in the divided states of America. No, we are the United States of America. Together, we can be an instrument of light, an extension of love, and a voice for justice. Thank you for speaking up for justice. And I hope that you will join Mark and me. I hope you'll help us spread Daniel's love and his light wherever it might be needed. I thank you all for your time, and God bless America.
That's amazing. Thank you, Judge Salas. Most especially, thank you to Judge Salas and Justice Moore, who are sitting judicial officers and have the ability to speak publicly, but do so in a nonpartisan way. And so for Mr. Feinberg and Mr. Grimm, we have a little less concern, but obviously we're sensitive to the fact that there are a lot of politics floating around this issue. But the idea here, folks, is this: we have to speak. We cannot be silent. Silence can be catastrophic. This is a time where we need to come together. We need to speak with one voice, and we need to speak in a neutral, non-aggressive, putting light and not darkness on what we do here. May 1st is actually National Law Day, May 1st. We thought about doing this on May 1st, but there's a lot of wonderful programs happening May 1st. I'm going to give you a website to an organization that's bringing together bar organizations across the country. And you can go to this website, and it'll show you where there are going to be actual physical rallies where you can get together and meet with lawyers and non-lawyers to talk about the rule of law in America. It's Law Day of Action, lawdayofaction.org. lawdayofaction.org is the website. Go on there and you can get access to lots of things that are going to be happening at the 1st of May. Mr. Feinberg, Judge Grimm, Justice Moore, Judge Salas, I can't thank you enough for your willingness to speak out and with us. And again, this is just the beginning of an ongoing dialogue across the country. Let's work together to recognize the judicial branch of government is a critical check and balance to the world that we live in. And what makes America great is its rule of law that we all follow. I chose April 15 to do this because it's the day we pay our taxes, because we all line up to do that. Let's go forward with light and shine and work together. And we'll see you the next time we do this. Folks, have a great rest of the day.